For those who don't know me, I'm Mitch Resnick, also known as MRes on Scratch, and I head up the Scratch team here at MIT. And it's just wonderful to be surrounded by so many people who have done so much to help spread the ideas and the spirit of Scratch around the world. So it's just great having you all here. It's hard for me to believe that it's already the 5th Scratch conference we've had here at MIT. Back in 2007, just a year after 2008, a year after we launched Scratch, Karen, Brennan, and I organized the first conference, and we've been doing them every other year here at MIT since. In between years, others in Barcelona and Amsterdam, other places have organized Scratch conferences. And it's been great to see how it's just grown and grown over the years, as Scratch itself has grown and grown over the years. And I just love the way that these conferences bring together people from so many different backgrounds and interests. I think at this year's conference, we have people from 25 different countries around the world. Actually, maybe people from outside the United States could stand up for a moment just to see. So it's great to have so many people coming from around the world. But there are also people. I think the crowd, the people coming, they also represent working in schools, but also working outside of schools. People working with very young children, up to people working with college students and beyond. People working across different disciplines, connecting together computer science and technology and art education and design. So connecting together all those different disciplines. So it's just been wonderful to see the wide range of different ways that people are connecting with Scratch and coming together. But I think one thing that also is wonderful, despite the very different backgrounds and interests people have, I think people come here sharing some common values and common vision. And we see people coming here dedicated to helping young people around the world learning to think creatively and reason systematically and work collaboratively. Dedicated to helping young people not only develop their thinking, but also develop their voice so they can express themselves in the world, and developing their identity so they see themselves as someone who can be an active participant and contributor to the world. So it's just wonderful to see all the ways that people come together around these shared ideas. The conference also brings together some longtime members of the Scratch community. There's some of you who've been using Scratch for almost a decade now. I know others are just getting started. Some have been to many Scratch conferences before. I know for some of you, I was talking last night at the reception. I know it's the first conference for some. Actually, I'd just be interested, for how many of you, if it's your first Scratch conference, could you stand up? Right. So, we want to welcome all of you who are coming for the first time, although I know I met some people where it's their first Scratch conference, but they've been using Scratch for a long time. But I hope that we all find ways, for those of you who have been at other Scratch conferences, reach out, connect with others who are here for the first time. We've tried to design this as a very participatory conference. Over the next few days, there'll be hands-on workshops and interactive panels and posters and demos where you can go up and talk to people who are developing things around Scratch. You have the chance to meet all different people, not just educators, but developers who are developing extensions to Scratch or variants to Scratch, and also researchers who are studying the ways young people are learning with Scratch. So I hope you'll take this as a chance to meet other people, to share ideas, to learn with and from one another. And in that spirit, maybe we'll just get started by learning a little about your neighbors. I'd like, if you can just take a couple minutes and maybe share with your neighbors a Scratch memory from the past year. If you're just getting started, talk about how you first found out about Scratch, but share a Scratch memory with the people sitting around you for a moment or two. Okay. I always hate breaking up active conversation. So, as I said, I always feel bad breaking up such, active conversation. But we did organize the conference. There'll be lots of opportunity for conversation. There's lots of time in between the sessions. And I think this type of interaction is exactly what we hope will fill the next few days. So since you had a chance to share some of your Scratch memories from the past year, I thought I would share a couple of my Scratch memories from the past year. A bunch of the memories are associated with the annual event that we do called Scratch Day. As you know, a number of years ago, we started having a Scratch Day here at MIT, but then started encouraging other people to run their own Scratch Day events around the world. And every year, it's grown and grown. This year, there were 659 events in 74 countries in May when we had Scratch Day. Actually, maybe just raise hands. How many people were involved in a Scratch Day? So it's great to see so many people and hope we can continue to spread that and grow it in years ahead. And it was great as we see just people sharing their ideas about Scratch Day from all over the world, from Indonesia and China, Oman, and different people all having different types of Scratch Days. Again, I think in the spirit of Scratch and in the spirit of the theme of this conference, with many paths, many styles. It's not a cookie cutter, every Scratch Day around the world is exactly the same. They share in spirit, but we love seeing how different places around the world all have put their own stamp on Scratch Day. And if we look at other places from Japan, Brazil, Rwanda, all around the world, so many different people finding different ways of bringing young people, educators, others together to work together on Scratch, share ideas about Scratch. Actually, the group that did the Rwanda Scratch Day also produced a video that was one of my most memorable videos from the year. So in addition to Scratch Day, they were actively participating in Africa Code Week, and they posted this video about some of their participation using Scratch during Africa Code Week.
hateguwe igikorwa cyo guhugura ku bumenyi bwa mudasobwa abana b'abakobwa bafite kuva ku myaka 8 kugera kuri 18 hamwe n'abarimu babo mu nkambi ya Gihembe iherereye mu ntara y'Amajyaruguru.
Ni igikorwa twatangiye cyo kwigisha ku mugabane wa Afrika wose ikoranabuhanga cyane cyane programme yitwa Scratch. Ni muri urwo rwego muri uku kwezi kwa kane twaguhariye impunzi aho ku itariki ya 2 twagiye kwigisha impunzi za Kigeme mu majyepfo y'igihugu. Uyu munsi tukaba twaje hano mu nkambi ya Gihembe mu majyaruguru y'igihugu aho dufite gahunda yo kwigisha abana b'abakobwa 300 n'abarimu bazasigara bigisha iyi programme igihe tuzaba twagiye.
And again, we saw other videos and photos from around the world of people sharing the spirit and supporting young people growing up as creative learners. For me, though, a lot of the strongest memories I have of the year are from individual Scratchers and seeing how Scratch has entered their lives. So I want to share with you a few quotes that we got. We get lots of mail from Scratchers around the world. I thought I'd share with you quotes from a few messages that we received this year from young people using Scratch. Here's one. Scratch has become part of my life. Every morning I wake up and I immediately think, how can I improve with Scratch? My friends and family don't quite understand the beauty of this website, but I do. It's art, music, games, and animation compressed into visual coding blocks, and that, in my humble opinion, is pretty amazing. So this idea, how can I improve with Scratch? That idea, it's not just how I can make a project, but saying this is something I can sort of continue to improve with in ways I can keep learning from. Here's another quote. Scratch has made such a huge impact on my life. Ever since I started as pi314159265 2 years ago. I'm a 9th grader. I still use it, even though I could easily switch to writing out my code. It's usually not even about the code, the animations, the games. It's all about the community. And again, that's something we hear from so many Scratchers around the world. They start out to express themselves, grading projects, but stay for the community, become part of the community. I think I was especially happy that someone who thought to create a username, pi314159, got so connected with the community. Because sometimes there's a feeling of someone who gets started with that would just be focused on the writing the project, but it's so nice to see everyone getting involved in the community. And one more quote that I'll share. Thank you so much for everything Scratch has done for me. Scratch really is an amazing community. Some things can be annoying, and Scratch could use a lot of improvement, but you're getting there. Scratch is a huge part of my life. I'll say 60%. So the same way that Scratchers wake up every morning and think how they can improve with Scratch, we on the Scratch team also think how we can improve Scratch. And it's good to get some encouragement that we're getting there. So it's nice to hear that. And if we keep doing it, maybe we'll get to 65% next year. So again, so it's great to hear from Scratchers. But of course, a main way that we interact with Scratchers is through the projects that they share on the Scratch website. It's amazing. Every day now, there's more than 20,000 projects shared on the Scratch website from young people around the world. Actually, many more than that are created. That's the number that are shared every day for other people to see and to interact with. So that's more than 100,000 projects every week, more than 6 million projects over the past year. And it's been so exciting for us to see, and so inspiring for us to see all the different ways that young people are using Scratch. And there are many projects that sort of capture our attention and just delight us and, and also give us ideas of how we can continue to grow and evolve Scratch. Over the past year, one project that really stood out to us was a project by a member of the Scratch community, Bubble103. And this came across in the past year. It was a project called Color Divide. And actually, it became a series of projects. It started out, the first one that we saw was a trailer for a series of projects that she was planning to work on. So let me show you the trailer project that she created and that caught our attention.
Welcome to Aurora, land of color and magic. Every child at the age of 12 faces the test to determine their magical strength and their color rank. But all is not as it seems. This test means everything to me. I can't fail. What if I don't get a color? I don't want a color anyways. I'm going to fail the test. But banishment, haven't you ever wondered what's out there? I mean, there's gotta be something. I got close to the gates once, and I saw something, a boy. I hate living in this place. The magicians are dictators. They tore my family apart. They destroyed my home and burned my mother. Together, we'll fail this test together.
Let's see what you're made of then, shall we?
So we love this project. It's not just that we clicked the love it button on Scratch. We really love this project. And we were so happy when actually we were organizing the conference and the creator of this project submitted a proposal. So I'm very happy that she's here with us today. And I want to invite Taryn, also known as Bubble103, to come up on stage to talk a little bit about her experiences. So it's great having you here and to be able to share your project and for more people to see it. So I thought maybe it would be great to have people hear a little bit more about some of what went into how you got the ideas for this project and the process of working on this project. I know this was just a trailer, and then you engaged lots of other people from the community to work with you on the projects that led from it.
So the trailer kind of started out as a collaboration. Well, the story was a collaboration. I was actually role-playing with these 5 other Scratchers that I'd kind of just met in the community. And we started coming up with this story called The Color Divide, where there'd be, well, the trailer. And I wasn't planning on making a project for it. We were just having fun role-playing and getting to know each other. I'm still friends with all of them. But then I sort of got struck by inspiration, and I was like, oh, I need to animate this. I hadn't ever animated in Scratch or animated all before, but that didn't matter because I was inspired. And I'd been working with the Scratch environment for long enough that I kind of felt comfortable enough to just try it.
You did start with Scratch around 5 years ago, or
Yeah,
so, right?
yeah. So it's been a while. And then I wasn't planning on kind of sharing this trailer on Scratch at first. I was kind of like, well, I don't know, I've never made something like this before. But I mean, I kind of just shared it and I was like,
And then what was the reaction like when you shared it?
well, I mean, I've always got a lot of support, you know, from the Scratch community, and I was so like overwhelmed with the response. And you know, at first I didn't really think about, oh, let's make an animated series. I was kind of just like, oh, I've got these images in my head and a story I'm inspired by and scratches that I kind of want to share this with. But then, you know, other scratchers in the community would come to me, they'd be like, Bubble, you need to make this a series. I'm like, okay, I've never done that before. But from them kind of believing in me and supporting me, I guess I kind of started to believe in myself. And I was like, you know what, I would make an animated series. Don't know what I'm doing, but
And then you put out a call to ask other people to help in developing characters and voices.
Yes, well, at first I was kind of I was doing it all myself. Like I did most of the voicing in the first episode, but I mean, a lot of people were really offering to help, and so I started to get more and more people involved. You know, it felt less like, you know, something I was making, something that we were making together. You know, that was that was great.
Yeah, and then actually, maybe you could play a little bit of the next one, the first installment
First episode
of the series is here. Maybe we'll just play a short bit of this, and then maybe you can talk a little bit about how people collaborated around it.
Welcome to Aurora, my home. Some call it the city of color and magic. It's great. We all know our place here. You see, we're all ranked based on our magical ability. If you're not so good at magic, that's a level red. The most powerful are violet. If you're not strong enough to get even a red, you're banished to outside Aurora, to the wilderness.
I mean, I can see here that it used 598 assets and has 413 scripts. So clearly a lot of work went into this project.
Yeah.
And I also see if I look down on the notes and credits, and it's great that you give lots of notes and credits. We always encourage members of the community. So you have a long list of all the people who help design characters and voice them and who conceive things. So. But maybe you can say a little bit more about how you all collaborate on this.
Yeah, so I ended up with this impressive credits list. So one of the things after I released the trailer, like a lot of scratchers were kind of, well, since it started from a role play and each of the characters were designed by the kind of 5 of us who started the story, a lot of other scratchers were like, oh, I want to be in this too. I want to make a character for this, which was so cool. I was so exciting for me. And so I wanted to have a way for like all of us to kind of be involved in it. So what I did was, so in the episode there's like a lot of kind of faces like in the scenery and characters there, and all of those were designed by other scratchers. So they'd come to me with their design or a drawing they've made, and then I just redraw it and put it in, and their name in the notes and credits. I mean, also the music is, something that's important to me is all the music I use is by other scratchers, because I'm so inspired by like where scratchers, they share like the music they've made on Scratch specifically for other scratchers to use in their projects.
Yeah, and I see clearly it became very popular in the community. We see that about 15,000 people watched it, and of those, almost 2,800 people loved it. So maybe you could say a little bit about the storyline, you know, about the color divide and why that had a special meaning for you, and how you thought about that.
I mean, at first it was, you know, the kind of collaborative story, and the sort of setting for it was made by the other scratcher who created the role play. But I mean, since then that I've been working with it, and it's taken on like so much more meaning for me, and I'm only really understanding now why I was so drawn to it at first. So the kind of main message that I'm doing from it is that society will, oh, okay, now it gets all deep. The one kind of thing that society is putting so much weight on and saying, well, to be a good person, you have to be this one thing. People are so much more than that. You can be so much more than that. A case of this, it's like magic, but I mean, it's so many other things in our world, and I mean, that's,
Maybe
yeah.
else a special meaning from where you grow up, maybe.
Yes, especially since, so I'm from South Africa, so I've grown up kind of still seeing the kind of scars that have been left by apartheid, like, in my country. So, like, each character is kind of inspired by the way different people kind of reacted to it and the kind of things I'm still seeing now. So, like, Leia, the one who was talking there, she's the one who's feeling like, kind of gut feel like, oh, something's not right here, but I'm too afraid to challenge it. The other one, Phage, the one with the fire in the eyes, a tragic story and everything. It took me ages to animate. She's the one who's been oppressed and she's got nothing to lose, so she's just like, screw it, I'm gonna rebel and stuff. And then, I mean, lots of other characters have specific messages as well about the importance of fighting for something instead of just against it, and building instead of kind of breaking something, all that stuff.
That's great. Maybe you can say a little bit about, so as you said, you started working on this in the past year you've been working on this. You started around 5 years ago. Maybe you can say a little bit about what attracted you to Scratch and what is it that kept you coming to Scratch and how that's evolved over time.
So I was introduced to Scratch just like one lesson at school, and we were kind of just told, like, put this block here, do this, which I didn't find that exciting. But so I went home. I went home like, okay, there's this thing called Scratch. All right. So I went in and I started messing around with it. I couldn't really get it to do what I wanted it to, but the thing I was so entranced by was like the kind of magic of making something and then the computer like does it. I'm like, oh, Scratch CAD moved. I'm a computer genius, guys. So I kept coming back to kind of feel that kind of magic of like playing around and making things happen. And most of the time it didn't do what I was expecting at all, and that was the best part. I mean, especially as someone who's always like been afraid of getting something wrong and making mistakes, it was so like freeing to be in a space where making mistakes is the best thing you can do. And but I mean, I got even more like kind of sucked into Scratch when I found the Scratch online community, which is just, yeah, they're probably the reason I'm actually like able to be not nervous right now. Is they all know that I'm here at the Scratch Conf. They're like, Bubble, you're gonna do great. I'm just like, thank you guys. They're so supportive, and I mean, it's a community that's kind of interacting on a different level, where we're all working together as content creators. So when we look at each other's projects, we're not taking it like at face value, like, well, I don't know what to say, man, but this animation, it's not quite what Disney did or whatever. It's like you can see exactly how they made it, and it's so inspiring, so inspiring.
Maybe we can take a look at some other projects that you did in the past. As I looked at your projects, and there's a wide variety. One thing that, again, I always like, first of all, looking at the website overall, and also with individual scratches, I get excited when I see that people have done a wide variety of projects, because I think that's what we'd hope, that people could express themselves in so many different ways. So here was one that I saw they did. There was a water cycle game where if we do this, it's a type of simulation where I can get to move the cloud, and I better move it over here to rain on the desert. But there wasn't enough, I didn't get enough water from the ocean. There. But maybe you can tell the story around this.
Well, so I started Scratch at school, and then I kind of started to experiment with using it in school, like for when we did projects. So we were supposed to design a computer game and write about it. I didn't really want to do that, so I just made it instead.
I have to keep working so it doesn't die off. Go ahead.
And then like a few of the teachers were like, okay, there's this Scratch thing and this kid's doing things. All right, so is it possible to make like a thing that teaches people stuff? And I was like, yeah, I think so, cool. So then I kind of messed around a bit and made this thing. It's so weird seeing this. I haven't looked at it in like a year or something. It didn't run on the school computers though, because we didn't have very good internet. Or the computers are these brick things like this big. So yeah, our teacher didn't really see it, but it was fun making it.
Well, and it looks like you're playing out something you'd been learning about in school and making it come to life. But this idea you said about using Scratch to help other people learn things, I know that's something else that has been part of what you've done on Scratch.
Yeah.
You had mentioned you had set up like to try to have people mentor each other on Scratch.
Yeah, that was, I wanted so I don't know, I love teaching, I love sharing like knowledge. I mean, I think that's a thing that is a lot in the Scratch community, is sharing ideas like and knowledge, not just projects. So I wanted to make a thing where I'd be able to teach new Scratchers all the things that I was confused about when I was a new Scratcher. But I wanted it to be like a kind of mentoring, like one-on-one thing. So I came up with this whole idea, and I put this whole thing together where I'd make a project which would teach kind of concepts, and then walk the Scratcher through making a kind of simple project using those concepts. Because I thought that was kind of the best way to learn, which is the way I kind of did. It didn't really work out that well because that time in South Africa, the electricity was really messed up, lots of drama, and we kept getting load shedding, so 3 times a day, electricity's gone, I'm just like, I'm done, it's not working. But I learned a lot from that.
But then you started making individual projects to help explain how to do some things.
So the mentoring thing didn't work, so I was like, I kind of want to make, so I didn't want to do something that was so high maintenance, but I still wanted to share these concepts that I wanted to teach. So I started making a few tutorials.
So like, here's one where it was about using the vector editor and the paint editor. I know in your projects you make great use of the vector editor.
I love vector editor. I'm such a weird fangirl. I like fangirl over vector editor. It's amazing.
Yeah. It's amazing. Well, it made us really happy because when we did Scratch 2.0, it was a lot of work to add vector editing in addition to bitmap. And sometimes we thought, should we really be doing this? So it makes us feel happy when Scratchers are so happy with it. So maybe you can just say a little bit. I'm just going to very quickly page through this. This is a very long tutorial. Yeah. It starts out explaining the different parts of the vector editor, but then how to make use of it. I don't know if you can just say some things about as I just page through very quickly.
Yeah, so the main thing that I wanted to focus on besides just the tools was teaching the kind of concepts. I'd seen a lot of tutorials where a Scratcher would kind of teach like how to do a specific thing, but for me, I really wanted to focus on the kind of concepts. So for me, the biggest concept to kind of grasp in vector was that you're working with shapes instead of like a flat image. So I wanted to find a way to kind of explain that to Scratchers. So again, I like the kind of learning where you're walking someone through making something and then explaining concepts as you go. Because when you're walking someone through making something like these eyes, you understand like, why am I learning this concept, and kind of showing them how to apply it. That was my kind of motivation for this.
No, this is...
I love drawing eyes, so that was my thing.
But it's great sort of seeing the process, because sometimes we just see final products of things. So for me, I sort of love it. I sort of can feel you going through it as I do this, so it's great to see the process. We also did other types. I noticed one other tutorial. So this was more on the creating images. Yeah. We had another one called You Gotta Love Variables. Yeah. So maybe you can say about this.
So that was the one that I did for this like mentoring thing. So I kind of edited it to make it standalone as like a tutorial. I did this because I love variables. Vector and variables are like my thing. I mean, also it had like a lot of meaning to me because that was the one concept that I struggled with the most when I was starting Scratch. It was the most abstract kind of thing. So I wanted to kind of share that with Scratchers, and I mean, all the kind of analogies I lose. I can't words right now. All the analogies I use are the ones that have like helped me to kind of understand it, like how a variable is like a box for like shoving information in, and then I have like the variables like almost like talking to the person and stuff.
So maybe can you share a little bit now some of your future plans of, I know there's still more work on the Color Divide series, but other things that you think that you might be working on, or both on Scratch or how this might be influencing other things you're thinking about?
I have so many plans. Like, I'll wake up in the middle of the night. I have to have like my sketchbook and everything next to me. I'm like, oh, what if I make this thing in Scratch? So I'll write it down, whatever. So I mean, some of the main things I'm thinking about, besides color divide, because that's happening. I'm continuing that. I want to do kind of projects with where I'm more experimenting with programming more, because I feel like I've kind of settled into a bit of a rhythm with color divide, doing the same kind of things. I was like, I want to get back into experimenting. I want to make maybe a story game or something. And then other things, there's a lot of stuff I want to do with the community. So they're kind of vague ideas. One of them I call doodling with code, which is kind of, I don't know, like an initiative thing. Kind of capturing celebrating that kind of magic of first playing around with something, just having room to just experiment and have fun. I haven't figured out the details yet, but it's happening sometime. I'll figure it out.
Great. Well, we all look forward to see it because we've been so inspired and excited by seeing the things you've done, and I'm sure we'll continue to learn more as you continue to contribute to the community. So I want to thank you for all your contributions. It's been great having you here. Thanks so much. So originally with this opening keynote, after talking about some of our favorite memories from the past year, we were going to move on to looking ahead, and I was going to be joined by some other members of the Scratch team, because there are lots of new things that we're planning for Scratch for the year and the years ahead. Things about new resources. We're coming with a set of 10 thematic packages of activities to have new pathways into Scratch. And we're just introducing now teacher accounts to help teachers And we're also starting to work on the next generation of Scratch. Right now we're on the second generation, Scratch 2.0, which moves Scratch online. And we're starting to work on the next generation of Scratch, which will be much more friendly for mobile devices. We're also doing more of connecting it to the physical world. And we want to share all of those things with you. And there'll be more time through the conference. In the conference, there'll be both sessions and posters about all of those things. So there'll be a chance for you to learn more about the teacher accounts and Scratch 3.0 and individual sessions. We also have a What's Next session on Saturday. But we changed plans because instead of looking ahead, we did decide it would be right to look back and give a tribute to a person. And I get emotional with this, so I hope you'll bear with me. To spend some time talking about a person who had a huge, huge influence on Scratch, and that's Seymour Papert. I think Seymour had just touched so many people in so many ways around the world through his work, and engaging us in rethinking the ways that we think about learning and children and technology. Through the work he did with the Logo programming language, the first real programming language for kids, which was a direct inspiration for Scratch. But more generally, his ideas have sort of sparked so many of the things that we've been doing with Scratch. So it felt it would be good to sort of spend some time reflecting on Seymour. I was so fortunate and so lucky to be able to work closely with Seymour for many years and have him as a mentor and as a colleague and a friend. I know there are other people in the audience too who worked very, very closely with Seymour from the early days. From the early days when he was first inventing, had a team here at MIT working on the original logo, which actually was this year's the 50th anniversary of Logo is right now. And he worked very closely with Cynthia Solomon, who was there as a close collaborator from the very, very beginning, and did the project. He wrote the paper, 20 Things to Do with the Computer. And I know there are other people here from the original Logo effort who did work in schools trying out the initial versions on these big expensive computers with kids to see what was possible. and then wrote about it. I know Brian Harvey is here, and Dan and Molly Watt, Michael Temple. There's a whole collection of people from the early days. Brian Silverman, who was one of the Seymour's closest collaborators and led the implementation and development of Logo and spreading it to the world through the work he did at Logo Computer Systems Incorporated and elsewhere. We have some of Seymour's students here, like Claudia Uria, who work closely and continue to spread Seymour's ideas. Actually, I'm very happy that Seymour's daughter, Artemis, is also here. So for some of us, who work so closely with Seymour, and but I know for many of you, as many of you know, Seymour had a very bad accident 10 years ago. It was, he was hit by a motorbike in Hanoi, and and never fully recovered. So he hasn't been able to be a full participant in the last 10 years. So many people here, really have never directly interacted with Seymour. Some of you who are new to this might not know much about Seymour at all. So especially for those, I want to spend some time talking about Seymour's contributions and some of the ways in which Seymour's ideas and his work directly influenced us with Scratch and continue to directly influence us with Scratch. I want to start, I was going to show a video because I want you to sort of, at least hear Seymour talking is important. I'm going to show a video that was made just in this past year. It was made by the Lego company in recognition of the 30th anniversary of the Lego company's collaboration with the Media Lab. Was, Lego 30 years ago approached Seymour because they saw what he was, they were inspired by his ideas about children and learning, and they thought there'd be a good connection, and indeed there was. So the Lego company then became a close collaborator. Seymour became the first Lego professor at MIT. They endowed a professorship. And we've worked together in wonderful ways over the years. I have the great honor, when Seymour became an emeritus professor, they renamed the chair in Seymour's honor, the Lego Papert professor. So actually, I'm so very honored now to be the Lego Papert professor, which feels so right because in some ways the two biggest influences of my life, my prior Papert and Lego. And in some ways, two of the biggest influences on Scratch. So I thought it'd be nice to show this video. It's around a 7-minute video that talks about the 30 years. For those who have never been to the Media Lab, it also tells you a little about the introduction to the Media Lab. But more important, an introduction to Seymour and his ideas and how it influenced the interaction and collaboration with the Lego company. But then I want to talk more about how we built on those ideas in our work on Scratch.
The great thing about the computer is that it can bring together in one experience the aesthetic, the personal, the bodily, the analytic, the mathematical, the abstract. All these things happen in one combined, integrated experience.
In 1984, there was a television program in the Danish television called Talking Turtle. And I happened to watch that, and there was this charismatic person there telling about what children could do with computers. That guy was Seymour Papert.
What we really have to think about is what produces involvement, engagement, what grabs the individual.
What interested me was Seymour Papert's view on children and how they can learn through experimentation, how they can learn through play.
Education has very little to do with explanation. It has to do with engagement, with falling in love with the material.
I was absolutely fascinated, and I said, go and get contact with him. We have to talk to him.
In 1984, I was already working with Seymour Papert, helping to connect Lego bricks to the computer so that children could control their Lego constructions from the computer. Then out of the blue, Seymour got a letter from top executives at the Lego company.
Seymour, whose life's work was children and learning, met Keld, whose life work was children, and the two of them really hit it off.
We started working together, and that's lasted now more than 30 years. The MIT Media Lab has 25 different research groups doing all different types of creative, innovative work.
In my work, I combine arts and crafts with electronics to create artistic, expressive pieces.
The Cityscope platform was developed to allow people to engage with urban planning.
This is the first device ever to make it easier for people to walk.
The researchers and students here at the Media Lab, they're constantly experimenting, trying new things, building complex structures from simpler parts. They're doing it in a Lego spirit. My own group is called the Lifelong Kindergarten Group, where we focused on designing new technologies and activities to engage people in creative learning experiences. A big part of our collaboration with the Lego company is sharing ideas.
We explore technology and how it can impact the human potential. From our perspective, primarily through play.
The Makey Makey is a little circuit board we invented here that lets kids transform anything in their world into a controller for games or music.
One of the things that we always talk about is we want to solve big challenges and big problems, and in order to do that, you have to be innovative. And I think to be innovative, you need people who are sort of not afraid to try new things, make mistakes.
So that means we need to help children become creative thinkers.
The goal of these creative workshops is really to give children an opportunity to come up with their own ideas, imagine something, and then figure out how to design it.
We should still keep this plate, but take this one.
They need to be constantly exploring, experimenting.
Whoa, oh my God.
Through natural discovery, by testing things, by tinkering, by experimenting, by creating.
They're using Lego motors and sensors, and then if it doesn't work the way they want, they start revising it.
So you have to kind of adjust the motor power so it actually has enough power to knock the lights off.
So they're really learning through having a goal, imagining something, and then bringing it to life. So rather than just thinking of the computer of something that I think, what am I supposed to do? They start thinking, what do I want to do with it? They start getting new ideas.
The children are learning to program. They're learning about motion. Above all, they're learning that scientific knowledge is not something separate from their passion for toys.
After a couple of years of cooperation, it crystallized that we really want to make a set for the schools.
We worked for several years on designing prototypes, testing out with children in classrooms.
When the elevator comes up, it'll reverse the direction and call elevator again. I goofed up now. Get it?
We could, in 1988, market the first product that had come out of the cooperation, which was called Lego TC Logo.
And as electronics got smaller and lighter and cheaper, we realized we could build the electronics of the computer directly into a Lego brick.
Seymour, at a point in time, probably maybe in the early 90s, started talking about the intelligent brick.
I remember many occasions walking into Kel's office with the latest prototype that we've developed at MIT, and you'd see the gleam in Kel's eyes. We would start talking about it, but he would immediately want to get his hands on the prototype. We ultimately came up with a final version that the Lego company came out with in 1998 as Lego Mindstorms. One thing that surprised us was that even though we had designed it primarily for children, initially a lot of the sales were to adults. They would build into robots as part of robot competitions. They would build piano-playing robots that would walk on the piano keyboard and play, plant-watering robots that would test out when the soil was dry, dancing robots that would dance to different music. It just opened up all sorts of new creative design possibilities for children around the world.
We can't say what children will need in the future. Adults shouldn't be saying what children ought to learn, but I think we can say something about how children should be learning.
Everyone should be able to learn to express their ideas with the computer, and that's what coding is all about.
When you say coding, people think of like numbers that are super complicated and stuff that even I don't understand, but like Scratch is much easier.
Scratch is a visual programming language for kids that we developed here. These elements on the screen actually look like Lego blocks, and you snap them together, and very quickly you can make things start happening.
Programming is like playing with Lego bricks. It's the same structured and very creative process.
You know that it can be done. It's just a question of how you find the way. That is exactly the same as your Lego experience.
It's constrained in a way that's really easy for kids to get started, but it's open-ended, so people can build anything.
It tells us the Lego idea is alive in the physical world, but it's very much alive in the digital world, and that's highly inspirational for us.
As I think about the future of our relationship with the Lego company, it's not just about bringing products to the world, but bringing change to the world. We're always thinking of Seymour's vision of a world where children can take control of their own learning, to use the materials around them to explore the world, to understand the world in new ways, and to understand themselves in new ways.
We think the approach of the Media Lab to learning is the way of the future, and that's why we take so much inspiration from this partnership, because we think it really defines how education, but also informal learning, should happen in society.
The fact that we share these values about creativity, imagination, play and learning belongs together, that is something that has kept us together for all these years.
This is where it leads to a fundamental change in the nature of the learning.
So I want to spend a few minutes just reflecting on some of the ideas that at least I took away from Seymour and the ways that they've influenced us as we've sort of worked on Scratch and other projects. And as difficult as it might be, I sort of boiled it down. I sort of grabbed 6 phrases that I thought sort of captured some of the spirit of things that I learned from Seymour, and so I want to talk a little about those. So the first, Seymour, in talking about his approach to learning, he used the term constructionism, and that term grew out of Seymour had worked with Jean Piaget, the great sort of epistemologist and philosopher and psychologist in Switzerland, in understanding children's learning. And Piaget, Seymour learned from Piaget about the way that children actively build up their knowledge structures through their interactions in the world. And what Seymour layered on top of that was that one of the best ways for help kids to build up that knowledge was to engage them in building things in the world. And Seymour saw building in the world in a very broad way. It wasn't just building with Lego bricks, although that's one way. It was also building sandcastles on the beach, or building animations on the screen with Logo or with Scratch, or building and creating a story or a poem. It was all about sort of taking your ideas and getting your ideas out to the world where they could be shared with others. And I think that was sort of the core of things that Seymour was talking about. And he sometimes would contrast constructionism with what he termed was too common in the world with instructionism. People thinking that the way to help people learn was to have better instruction. And of course, instruction can be a worthwhile thing, but he said that's not the way that we're going to transform young people's lives, is by just coming up with better ways of instructing, better ways of delivering information, better ways of delivering instruction. Instead, we have to change it and create situations where children can design, create, express themselves. And that's really what he did through his life. In many ways, the current maker movement very much grows out of Seymour's ideas about learning through making, creating, building. And you really should see Seymour as the patron saint of the maker movement. And I do think similarly with Scratch, had a big influence. With all the work going on in the world these days around coding, a lot of it really isn't about making things. You see a lot of things around coding where it's learning certain concepts or solving a certain puzzle. And again, there's some value to that. But I think Seymour would always argue that the way for people to really become engaged with something and to engage with the ideas in a deep way is to be doing it while creating a project. So in Scratch, the project is the core unit in Scratch. And it's because we want people to create things and share things with others. And that sort of comes right out of Seymour's ideas. The second Seymour idea that I thought of was he talked about objects to think with. And he would emphasize that the objects in a child's world have a big influence on the way they make sense of the world. The fact that we're born with 2 hands helps us in understanding symmetry and pairs. So the things that we have around us influence how we think about things. One reason he liked the collaboration with the Lego company was it was an object in children's world that could help them in understanding the world and building in the world. in Seymour's work with logo, he really took that seriously and building on his own personal experiences. In the foreword to Seymour's classic book, Mindstorms, he talks about his own childhood experience with gears. The foreword is called Gears of My Childhood. And he talks about the way that he grew up in South Africa, like Taryn, and was oftentimes in the bush with his father, who was an entomologist, and loved car parts and truck parts, and became fascinated with gears. And looking back, he said there was so much of mathematics that he learned from playing with gears. But another important part there is not just learning the mathematical concepts which he learned from gears, which he did, but importantly, in that foreword, Seymour says, and he italicized this, he said, "I fell in love with the gears." And I think Seymour recognized it wasn't that the best objects to think with are also objects you can relate to, and objects you can engage with, and objects you can care about. So he fell in love with the gears, and that's what made the gears so special, and why he was able to learn those mathematical ideas was because he fell in love with the gears. And I think he tried to do similar things when he invented logo, along with others here. A central object in logo was the turtle. And so with logo, you give commands to the turtle, and you have the turtle, you tell it to go forward, and it moves forward, and to turn, and it turns. So you can relate to the turtle as an object, like your own body. So you draw on your own personal experience with your body, and you learn programming, not in some abstract way of doing calculations, but by interacting with an object you could care about, the turtle. I think we've also tried to keep that in mind in all of our work. When we developed Scratch, Scratch is, the sprite of Scratch is sort of the central object. And we made Scratch, we might call very sprite-centric. In fact, there's not even an easy way to sort of be the conductor of saying, I want all of this is what all the different objects should do. In Scratch, you sort of go inside the object, and inside all the programming in Scratch, you say, what should this sprite do? What should this object do? So you can imagine yourself as a sprite, and you give the commands for what you want the sprite to do. So again, very much we want to turn that into objects to think with, and objects to care about, and objects to engage with. Seymour also chose the objects like the turtle in order to help highlight what he would call powerful ideas. Because it wasn't just a matter of becoming engaged with these objects, but for learning deep and important ideas from your engagement with these objects. In fact, the subtitle to Seymour's book, Mindstorms, was Children, Computers, and Powerful Ideas. And actually, 20 years after the publication of Mindstorms, it came out in 1980. In 2000, he wrote a paper where he lamented the fact that people didn't pay enough attention to that third phrase. He said, people pay attention to children and computers. More children are using computers now, but it's usually missing the powerful ideas. And for Seymour, the powerful ideas were always central. And when Seymour talked about powerful ideas, he was talking about ideas that can cut across different disciplines. It wasn't an idea that could just help you do one thing, but ideas that could help you in many different things. Ideas that could help you learn other things. Ideas that could help you learn about learning itself. So he was always looking to see how can we sort of engage people with a core set of powerful ideas that can help them in all of their learning. So like he would often give example of a scientific concept like feedback, which used to be studied only at the university level at places like MIT. But he said new technologies could let children start playing with this idea. And it was an idea that cuts across. It's not just an idea that you should think about in an engineering curriculum at MIT, but it's used in your everyday life. Feedback, certainly it is a way of understanding how your thermostat works in the heating system. When it gets colder, it turns on the heat. When it gets warmer, it turns off the heat. That's a type of feedback. But also, the way we walk is feedback. If you start to lean one way, your body adjusts the other way. The way things inside of our body work is about feedback systems. That when something starts to get out of whack one way, the body reinforces an alternate way to bring it back in line. So this idea of feedback was something that he saw as important. And I think one reason he was so excited when we connected the Logo programming language to Lego, it gave more ways to use the sensors of Lego to explore that type of powerful idea. So Seymour's always looked at those powerful ideas. And again, I think in Scratch, we've tried to also do that. Like inheriting from Logo, a core idea was the modularity. So it's not just a matter of writing a program to get something done, but giving you new strategies for thinking, strategies for solving problems, strategies for designing projects, to be able to break down complex things into simpler parts, to take small building blocks and make more complex things. Or the idea of debugging is a powerful idea. Actually, I thought it was lovely when Taryn was talking about her experience with debugging and when she used Scratch, that it's okay that things go wrong, and then you figure out and you play around with it to see how to fix it. And that's part of the process. So that idea of debugging was also something that I think Seymour saw as a powerful idea and that we tried to highlight in Scratch and to give people ways that they can, play around, experiment. It's okay for things to go wrong. But then to try to figure out how could I make changes in that. And that debugging the project is also a way of debugging your own thinking. So it's a way to think about your own thinking, which is something that Seymour was always looking to support. A fourth idea was related to Samba schools. So Seymour did not invent Samba schools, but he was very influenced by Samba schools. In one of the later chapters in Mindstorms, Seymour talks about going to Brazil and observing the Samba schools. And I think this chapter was important because especially when Seymour was writing Mindstorms, most people thought of computers in a very individual way. It was before the internet. And in fact, it was called the personal computer. It's your personal machine. You interact with the machine. You do things. And that's the way most people thought about the computers that were entering lives. But Seymour saw the computer should be part of a broader culture and that learning was always situated within a broader culture. And he points to the example of the Samba schools where they're planning the different dances for the festival in Rio and in other cities in Brazil. And he talked about that it wasn't just you come and you take a class to learn something, how to make a float or how to do a dance, but as the community came together and everybody was learning with and from one another. So it was a way to bring people together, not just with an instructor delivering information or instruction to a learner, but a whole community coming together, learning with and from one another. And Seymour had the vision that that's how computers should enter the world as well. And he was ahead of his time because the technology wasn't quite there yet. The internet certainly has helped support that over time and had a deep influence on us as we worked on Scratch. The Scratch online community, we see it as a type of Samba school of bringing together kids from around the world and adults too, who will share not just projects, but share ideas with each other, mentoring each other, doing tutorials the way that Taryn was talking about. So this idea of learning with and from one another is a key part of what Seymour was talking about. Seymour loved the phrase hard fun. He said he took it from what he heard from kids. When kids were using Logo, he said they would often say, well, it's hard, but it's fun. And that resonated with Seymour because Seymour said too often people think that kids want things easy. And he said that's wrong. Kids are willing to do things that are hard as long as it's things they care about. And he said that when kids lose interest in school, it's not because it's too hard, it's because they find it boring. He said what you need to do is to have things that, that they are deeply engaged with and they're willing to tackle difficult challenges. And I think he would be skeptical. Right now, there is more of an interest in the education world of bringing some sort of fun into the learning process. But sometimes it's by just sprinkling sugar on top, that if you do something, you then get a reward. And that's not at all what Seymour meant by hard fun. He meant something where the fun came from the deep engagement with the thing you were creating, with the ideas you were exploring, the ideas that you were grappling with and playing with. And again, this is something that we always try to do both in Scratch and the way we introduce Scratch is to connect to both interests and ideas, to make sure that we connect to young people's interests, to connect to where they are with their interests and what they're interested in doing, but also connect with the powerful ideas. So to always make sure, and we see that kids are willing to work hard, persist in the face of challenges and difficulties if they're working on things they care about and ideas that they care about. The final phrase, epistemological pluralism. It's a mouthful. I couldn't even fit it on one line on the slide. So, and this is a phrase that actually Seymour developed with his colleague, Sherry Turkle, another professor here at MIT and a longtime collaborator with Seymour. And it very much connects with the theme of this conference, many paths, many styles. What they meant by epistemological pluralism is multiple ways of knowing, multiple ways of understanding the world, multiple ways of understanding yourself. And I think Seymour was always concerned that there was too much of uniformity in the world, that too often schools privileged certain ways of knowing. And for people who were very good at that way of knowing, they succeeded at school and were happy at school, but it left aside so many others. And Seymour was always saying, it doesn't have to be that way. There's not just that one way of knowing. As an example, he often talked about two forms of engagement. In the paper he wrote with Sherry called Epistemological Pluralism, they talked about planning and tinkering, where planning is an approach where you come up with a problem, you sort of analyze the problem, you come up with a solution, you try it out, and you assess it. With tinkering, you see something, you're not quite sure how it's going to work, you try something out, it doesn't quite work, you try to debug it, you try something else, and you keep on iterating to try to come up with something better. And Seymour says too much of school and society privileges planning. And planning is useful. This is not a put down of planning. It's useful to do planning. But he said in some situations, and for some people, tinkering is a much better approach. So this idea of valuing many paths and many styles was an important part. And again, in developing Scratch, that was important for us. We didn't want Scratch to be something just for kids who already would have gotten involved in coding and programming. We wanted to reach out to everybody from all different interests, all different styles, all different backgrounds, to have many different pathways. So we try to set up the way Scratch is and the type of materials we develop around it to have multiple pathways into Scratch, to make sure that everybody, especially those who normally wouldn't have been engaged in these types of activities in the past, that everyone feels comfortable engaging and excited about engaging in these ideas. These ideas sort of, again, I mentioned Mindstorm, which is a classic book. I mean, if there's one thing to remember from this, if you haven't read Mindstorms, I really encourage you to go out and read Mindstorms. It was written in 1980, 36 years ago. You have to recognize some things feel a little out of date. Writing about computers in 1980, it's hard to predict exactly what the world's going to be like in 2016. But for me, what's more striking is how much is still so relevant to today, and how much of what Seymour writes about with learning and children is so true to the issues of today. So, although so sadly Seymour is no longer with us, I think the challenge for all of us is to make sure that Seymour's spirit stays alive, and that what we do at this conference and beyond is one of the ways that we can contribute to make sure that Seymour's ideas and Seymour's spirit stay alive and healthy and grow and spread around the world. Thank you. With that, I'm going to pass on to Saskia Leggett, who many of you met as the organizer, who's been organizing the conference, and she'll talk about some of the schedule for today and some other things to know about the conference.
Hi, everyone.
I thought you were great. No, I thought that.
Okay, there's so many of you. I'm Saskia. I'm one of the conference organizers, and I'm going to be walking you through some logistics for today. So everybody should have a program, and your schedule is on the program. This is just a quick overview of what's happening today. Two things to note are that morning workshops start very soon. The first one's at 11, and the second workshop today is at 2. Workshops are an hour and a half today. Workshops for today required prior sign-up. So if you have an assignment, you should have a ticket in your name badge. It's either blue or yellow, depending on the time. And if you don't have a sign-up, that's totally okay. You can stay in this room for the Scratch Educator Meetups Network session in the morning. And this room is also going to host the World Peace Song Project in the afternoon. There's also space this morning in the Community Block session, as well as the Code Create Art Alive session, which are both on the 3rd floor. There are also maps in your program. The Media Lab is kind of labyrinth-like at some points. So I encourage you to open up your program and check out the maps that are in there to help you get around. There's a bunch of signage. But if you have a question about where to go, or if you get lost, you can always find somebody with an orange lanyard, which I will be wearing after this. Okay. Poster sessions start at 4 p.m. today. They're in 2 locations this year. on the 3rd floor, which is where the reception was last night, and the 1st floor atrium, which is where you checked in. So I encourage you to check out both floors. There's going to be a lot of fun stuff happening at the poster sessions. Okay, at 7 o'clock, there are self-organized dinner excursions tonight. So we're meeting at 6:45 p.m. In the 1st floor lobby to go off into Kendall Square for your dinner excursion. If you have not signed up for a dinner excursion, you can use this URL. I'll leave it up for a second. So dinner excursions are basically groups of people going off into Kendall Square, having dinner together, and getting to know each other in an informal and fun way. So I encourage you to sign up for a dinner excursion if you haven't already, and you do not need to go on a dinner excursion if you'd like to do your own thing. And also, if you want to add your own dinner excursion, you can just tack it onto the bottom of the sheet. A few other quick things. I'm just going to put my phone in my pocket. Okay, that's better. A few other quick things. We have unconference rooms available throughout Friday and Saturday. An unconference is basically a mini conference that doesn't have an agenda. So if there's something that you want to talk about or discuss, or if you have a topic in mind, feel free to write it on a Post-it note and stick it up on the unconference wall, which is directly outside of this room. Something to note is that there's an unconference scheduled for Scratch Conference 2017. So if you're interested in learning more or even hosting Scratch Conference 2017, find that one on the wall. We also have cards in that area. I haven't officially named these, but they're I want to learn, I can help with cards. And a few people have been filling these out, which is awesome. So if there's something that you can help with, I encourage you to fill out one of the cards. If there's something you want to learn, I also encourage you to fill out a card. And then you can find people who can perhaps teach or learn one of your skills and connect with them on Twitter or through email. There are also day planners available outside. So I encourage you to plan your day, to reflect on stuff that you want to learn today. So grab one of these on the tables as well. Almost done. And we have free entry at the MIT Museum and Museum of Science using your name badge. So if this is interesting to you, take your name badge over to one of these museums and go check it out. I almost finally, encourage you to use the hashtag ScratchMIT2016 for all social media, especially pictures, which we're really excited to see your pictures. This is my favorite thing. We have a Snapchat filter. So if you're connected to the Wi-Fi here, either MIT or MIT guest, this filter will pop up. And I very highly encourage you to use the filter and take some selfies. There's also a photo booth outside too, so you can use the filter in the photo booth. A few points for help. If you need anything throughout the conference, you can tweet at us. So the hashtag is hashtag AskScratchMIT. So tweet away and we'll send you a response. Also, you can check out the TVs around the lab. Those have the schedules on them through the day. And you can talk to us at the help desk, which is the purple desk right outside the room. And anybody who's wearing an orange lanyard is a Scratch team member or a volunteer. So if you see somebody with an orange lanyard and have a question, you can ask them. Just a quick note, there's no photography permitted in the other labs, but public spaces, all the 6th floor, and the rooms that you'll be in, you can take as many photos as you want. People who are wearing green lanyards asked to not have their photos posted on the internet, so that's just something to be mindful of as you're posting on the internet. And the last thing, if you flip your tag over, as I'm sure many of you guys have discovered already, there's a sprite on the back of your name tag, and there are 12 of them. So I encourage you, if you see somebody else who has your sprite, go say hi, introduce yourself. We'll be doing more fun things with the sprites later on in the day, and have an awesome day today. We're so excited to have you here.
One final thing. We do just want to thank, this conference is made possible. We've had lots of generous people and organizations who have helped support the conference. I just want to give a shout out to the Scratch Foundation, to Intel, to Google, the Siegel Family Endowment, to MIT Office of Digital Learning, the LEGO Foundation. They've all been major contributors. No Starch Press, which has given books for the conference. So we really appreciate all the support that we've gotten from others that have made this to help support the conference. So thanks and have a great day, and look forward to seeing you through the day.